You had told me once about somebody's house got blown up. Somebody had stolen some furs or something when they weren't supposed to, and their house got blown up.
I don't remember that. No, must have been somebody else.
And I remember something about a tunnel from the house, from Bruno's house, across under the yard, up through the.
That's true. To Angelotti's.
Angelotti's funeral home was
the other terminal. And it started in Sarusi's old building.
Where Bella Bruno's restaurant was on right on the corner. They had run pipes in through the walls, all the way upstairs to the third or fourth floor, I forget.
And that was like a still.
That's what they used.
So this was during Prohibition.
Right,
Yeah.
of course. And then they had built this tunnel underneath Oakley Avenue over to Angelotti's. And when they had the alcohol done, ready for shipping in 5-gallon cans, it would go out of the garage by Angelotti's to be shipped.
So the still was at Angelotti's?
No, the still was in the building.
Across the street.
Actually, it was in the,
But they would bring the demijohns over to Angelotti's, and then he would deliver them with the hearse or whatever.
I thought I remember something about laundry trucks were used to deliver things.
oh, well, that was I had so many different jobs. When the Depression hit, you know, up between 1927 and 1929, things were pretty good. But then in 29, when the crash came, jobs became scarce, everybody was out of a job. My father was fortunate enough to be working at Tractor Works. When he came back from the Army, instead of going back to McCormick Works, he went to work at Tractor Works, which was just starting up as another plant. And us young fellas, we were all out of work. Dan, your cousin, and I, Raymond, all of us were out of job. Renato was the only one that was working, and he was working for United Airlines at the time. And he was an Underwood bookkeeper. But during that time, then I was able to get different jobs. Because I'd gone to a mechanic school, somebody approached my father that was working for Studebaker. In order to sell my father a car, they agreed to give me a job in the garage as a mechanic. So my father went for it, and I don't know how he paid for the car, but we finally wound up with this little Studebaker Dictator, 1928 it was. And I had gotten a job from working for AT&T. And it was a good job. I was making pretty good money at that time.
For AT&T?
Yes. Well, actually it was Western Electric. And I was working on switchboards. I was working in a cage. I was bonded because I was dealing with a lot of platinum and that kind of stuff. But anyway, in those days I was earning a little bit more than my father. And when this guy sold my father the car, he insisted that I go and work in the garage. My mother said, we spent $250 to send you to school, so you better make some use of it. I said, I didn't want to quit because the superintendent there took a liking to me, and I was going to be transferred to the Hawthorne plant over in Cicero. And one of the first ones in the department, he said, you have a real good chance. I was only, what, 17, 18 years old.
I didn't know you then.
No. And I didn't want to quit no way. You know, I liked the job. It was making good money. I was making almost $30 a week. That was unheard of.
What were you doing exactly?
I was working on switchboards, telephone switchboards.
Wiring and
you know, and all that stuff. So because prior to that I had gotten a job at a Jewel Electrical Instrument Company. The school got me that job. when I finished the 2-year course at Greer College, they had an employment department that placed the kids that were going to school there. So they sent me up to this place, and I was working on electrical meters, calibrating and all that stuff. I worked there for quite a while until Western Electric decided, we were working on all of Western Electric's meters, milliamp meters, voltmeters, and so on. They decided to set up a department of their own to repair these things. So Joule Electric went out of business. And in the meantime, I got this job on 23rd and Washington out there, right in the neighborhood, through Arthur Pellegrini.
Yeah.
He was working there as a cabinet maker. So he threw his pass out the window at me one time, and I took his pass, and I was able to get into the plant. So I'm wandering around up there this one time, and some guy nailed me, and he said, "Who are you? What are you doing here?" I said, "I'm looking for a job." And anyway, he took me to the superintendent's office. And he said, "You got a lot of nerve." I said, "Well," I said, "I'm looking for a job."
Now, what plant was this?
This was at
Western Electric.
Oh, at Western,
It
yeah.
was Western Electric, but on 23rd Street.
Yeah.
So he said, he started questioning me, you know, and what I could do, and I told him where I was working and everything. He said, "You're just the kind of guy we're looking for."
Wow.
So he took me into a room, and they had all these meters in there. And he said, "Now show me what you can do." So I named all the stuff, you know, the milliamp meters, how to calibrate this and that, take one apart, put it together again. And he said, "Okay." So he called somebody, and they took me down to the employment office and signed me up. And then I had to go to the doctor's office, and I had a couple of little cavities. I had to get those fixed before
Well-
they would hire me.
Really?
Yes.
They didn't want any time off because of your
Right.
toothache?
You had to pass a physical
toothache.
examination.
But you had to pay to have those fixed, right? I mean.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Dr. DeCoslo over there was very cheap.
Oh.
Yeah. $3 for a filling
Oh,
or
yeah.
something. Yeah.
Anyway, I went back and I got hired. So this superintendent, he said, "I'm setting it up so that when that department opens up over there at Hawthorne, you're going to be transferred over there. You'll be one of the first people hired for that department. You're young, you know the business,
Wow.
and
It's a good opportunity.
he said, eventually, you know, you become a little bit more than an assembler." And I liked it. So he sent me to this department where they worked on these switchboards, and so that I could make pretty good money compared to a lot of people who were on the outside who were making $15, $16 a week. I was making $25, $30 a week.
Wow.
So he followed me pretty closely. So when the day came that my father insisted that I quit the job there, and I fought it, I didn't want to quit.
Why did he want you to quit?
To take the
Well-
job that the Studebaker dealer
Yeah,
had offered
'cause they
as a
figured
mechanic.
They had spent all that money.
Oh.
So
Send me
make
to
him a
school, why
mechanic.
don't you
Yeah.
go into something, you know, he didn't understand what was going on.
Yeah.
But some of what you learned obviously was applicable to this electrical job too, right?
Well,
I
I've
mean-
always
I
been
think
a little
he just-
mechanically
his
inclined.
aptitude-
Oh.
Was more.
Mhm.
Anyway, so they insisted, so I had to go in the office and tell this guy that I'm sorry, but my parents would, I give him the whole story. And he got mad. He said, "You're missing a very good opportunity." And he said, "I'm going to tell you something else. If you quit, you're never going to get a job at Western Electric again." In those days, they used to blackball you. Anyway, I went to work at the garage. And I was getting all the crappy jobs, changing springs and delivering cars and so forth, which was all right. I enjoyed driving the cars around and everything. I used to go from there to the main office on 22nd and Wabash, right down and through there. And it was good. I was making about 55 cents an hour. But then, you know, I went to the shop foreman one time. His name was Ford. I said, hey, you know, I went to school to learn how to be a mechanic. I said, not to change springs and fix flat tires. So he said, you know, I got to tell you, the only reason you're here is because Frank, who was the guy that sold, he was a mechanic in there, sold my father the car. He said, he asked us to put you on. But we don't really need another mechanic. These guys all been with this department for a long, long time, and they were getting all the good jobs. So he said, we really don't have a job for you. So in 3 or 4 weeks that I was there, I lost money. I had to buy tools and all that stuff. So finally I told my mother and father, I said, look, I have to go back and see if I can get my job back over there. So by that time, that department was going already. And when I applied for the job, the guy was real happy to put me on. And they were quite fussy, you know. They used to give you a micrometer and measure this and measure that and answer all kinds of questions. And I was all set to go until they pulled the record out. And I was blackballed. The guy says, I'm sorry, but I can't hire you.
So he really did that?
Yeah.
Oh.
I could never get a job there again.
Did you ever try to talk
That
to
was
him?
the biggest mistake.
Jesus. How awful.
Anyway, from then on, of course, we were all out of a job again. Dan and Raymond and Renato was the only one that was working for United Airlines at the time. But Dan and I used to go hunting in order to make enough money to buy gas. We'd shoot blackbirds, anything that came along, and then we would sell them to the restaurants.
And then you would deliver the ladies to work?
Oh
in the
yeah,
morning?
well we
They
had
had
regular
a
delivery
route.
service. In 1929, when the crash came, my folks, through some friends of my dad's, had invested all their money in Insull utility stocks. When the crash came, Mr. Insull, he went to Canada to get away. Everything kaplunk, went down the drain. Eventually they lost everything. My father was in the hospital at that time, at the Heinz Hospital, with this back operation. And my mother didn't know what to do, and I didn't know anything about the business, you know. What did I know about stocks? And the guy that sold the stocks to my folks kept insisting to hold on to it, hold on to it. In the meantime, all his other friends, they dumped. And they all got 95 cents out of the dollar for their stock. My folks lost $4,000. That was their life savings. So Dan and I decided that we got to do something. We started going out with the girls who I met through we were playing pinochle one time. Renato, Dan, Raymond, and I down in Renato's house. And it comes this one here in the door. She had bangs, you know, long hair. And I looked at her, and Ray said, "Put your eyes back in your head." She said, "She's my cousin." I said, "I don't care whose cousin she is." I said, "That woman is for me." She said, "You gotta be kidding, she's too young for you." I said, "Never mind." I said, "I'll bet you $10 I get a date with her."
See, you didn't. Not
No.
Not ever.
So I started egging her on, and I guess I must have been kind of attracted to her too, because she didn't resist too much.
No.
But anyway, when I found out how old she was 15 years old. I said, "Boy, this is jailbait, not for me." So I dumped her. And I didn't see her for a long, long time, for about a year, year and a half. I think you were almost 18 by the time I met you again.
No.
17. Anyway, I met her again at Guy's Paradise Ballroom. She was there with the whole gang, and I don't know why I was there. I was there to see Kaiser.
It was Kay Kaiser.
Kay
right?
Kaiser and his College of Musical Knowledge. I still remember the name. And I didn't dance, but I used to stay and listen to the music. And all of a sudden I met her again. And we got together and talking, and so I joined the gang again. I had dropped out of the gang. And from then on, of course, we kept going on all the time. And anyway, her mother wasn't too happy about the whole thing, because I had built up a pretty bad reputation in the neighborhood as being a wild man, you know.
Really?
With the
What did
car.
you do?
Well, I was
He
running
was
around.
supposed to have a fast car, you know.
Yeah,
and,
in that respect,
in
not
that-
anything else.
Not for anything else.
I
just-
hadn't known any other girls before then.
How fast was this fast car?
Oh, in those days, if you went 40 miles an hour, boy, you were really
speeding,
going.
you know, real bad. And then you'd go tearing down the alleys,
Yeah, well,
and everybody'd have to get out of the way. That's how you got the reputation.
that's right. So, anyway, Dan and I decided that we're gonna do something about getting a job and doing something about making some money. So, we're sitting on a curb one day and we're talking, and we all both liked to hunt, you know, but we didn't have any money to go hunting. Shells cost money, gasoline cost money. So anyway, we managed to scrape up enough money, and I used to buy gasoline from some kids,
That
25
probably still, right?
25 cents for 5 gallons.
Probably siphoned it out.
Yeah,
of another
well, in
car.
those days, you know, gasoline for 75
No.
cents used to get 5 gallons for crying out
I
loud.
was gonna say, I think it was about 15 cents a gallon.
That's right.
Something like that.
Anyway, Dan says, well, why don't we go hunting? We get some blackbirds, whatever comes along, and then her uncle, Basho, he ran the restaurant there on Oakley Avenue. Toscano's was willing to buy the stuff from us.
G&G, there was a whole bunch
See,
of
and
them.
they used these blackbirds. We'd clean them and everything.
Mm.
We sold them for 50 cents a dozen. And they would use them to make spaghetti sauce. All their sauces. It makes a wonderful sauce.
Mm.
But then, of course, they discard the birds.
Well, not
And,
exactly.
well, we used to eat them,
We used to
actually.
eat them, because the breast and the little
But,
eyes.
We would go during the week. Every morning, we'd pick up these women with the cars, 10 cents a piece. I got 4, I think, in my car, and Dan was able to get 5, I think, in his. We'd pick them up at home, take them to the tailor shops, because everybody was working in tailor shops in those days. And 10 cents a piece going, 10 cents a piece coming back. And for them, it was wonderful, because even though the streetcars were only 7 cents, they didn't get the service of being picked up at home.
Door to door.
Yeah,
and
and
yeah,
door to door.
that's right.
Yeah, and they were all heavy, you know,
So
older women. They
by the end of the
approved
week, on Friday night, we each had a couple of dollars, you know, then we'd go to Maxwell Street and we'd buy these outdated shells, shotgun shells, for maybe 25 cents a box or something like that.
With the
kick. Boy, talk about kicks. And then we'd had enough money to buy gasoline, and usually it was with my car because Dad's father wouldn't let him use it. He had to beg for that car. And we'd go up to Antioch, and we had some farmers up there that we
Oh.
got acquainted with.
I'm afraid we have to stop due to the battery.
Oh.
Okay.
We'll pick this up with the hunting
Yeah, You're
episode.
in Antioch.